Understanding consumer decisions is the key to growing your brand. But what influences these choices? We created a measurement framework that leverages the latest thinking on the triggers that drive consumer choice decisions. In this mini-series, join effectiveness expert Binet from Adam & Eve DDB and global brand consultant Hilary Gaines from Metrics Lab as they unpack the 3 key components you need to tackle the full ecosystem of brand influences: emotional resonance, mental availability, and physical availability. In this episode, we chat about emotional resonance and why it influences consumer choice decisions, no matter the category.
I'm Hilary Gaines, and I'm one of Metrics Lab's global brand consultants.
I'm Binet. I'm head of effectiveness at Adam & Eve DDB, an advertising agency in London.
You've categorically demonstrated that emotions are essential in brand building. How have you seen this impact on brand growth and profit and payback over time?
Yeah, I tend to sort of use the word emotion as a sort of bit of a shortcut, but really, you hit the nail on the head when you said System 1. Really, the distinction is between System 1 and System 2 thinking. So System 2 thinking is what we think of as thinking, conscious, linear, controlled thought, which is almost none of what goes on in the brain. It's a tiny proportion of the brain's activity. Most of what goes on in the brain is fast, automatic, semi-conscious processing, which we are almost unaware of. And if we are aware of it, it comes to us in the form of feelings. So it's feelings, emotions, feelings, and associations. Those are the main things that drive most human behavior, let alone consumer choices. And so what we find is that advertising and marketing that works at the level of emotions and feelings and associations tends to produce bigger effects, longer lasting effects, and bigger profits, more money in the long term. So get back to this idea that most of marketing is not communication. It's not telling people things. It's not transmitting information. It's training people to have visceral, emotional, unconscious responses and feelings about things.
We do have some clients say, do emotions really matter in our category? And they tend to be sort of maybe low involvement categories, finance, etc. But actually what we found, maybe surprisingly, that emotions matter not just in CPG repertoire categories, but also in low involvement categories like finance or high ticket infrequent purchase categories. Think about cars, you may hone down your consideration set, and arguably there's a lot of rational decisions in there. So you may hone that down to maybe 3 makes, models, but then what kind of fuels that final choice? And emotions do play a key part in that.
Absolutely. So I remember some years ago reading a book which was talking about the psychology of human choice. And you can sort of look at decisions in terms of their complexity and their importance. And what tends to happen is decisions that are not very important tend to be made just on gut feel, because why bother to think about it? It's expensive. Yeah. And decisions that are complex tend to be made on gut feel because you can't solve them analytically. So what tends to happen is buying a chocolate bar is done on gut feel. Buying a house or a car is done on gut feel because that's too complex. Only a handful of decisions are done rationally. The author said a good example of a thing that might be done rationally would be buying a corkscrew, where it's there's just enough, it's just important enough for you to bother. And it's a simple enough purchase that you could actually go, actually, this one is functionally better than that one. But there's only a tiny proportion of products that are like that.
And you don't need corkscrews these days. They're all screwed
no, well, exactly. It's probably an old book. But basically, big things and small things you have to do on gut feel.
How do brands go about building or strengthening an emotional connection? And that's a question that our clients often ask. So, for example, for a retail client, we found that emotional resonance was playing the biggest role in driving equity in their home improvement category. So they wanted to know, well, how can we strengthen our emotional connection? And we did this by, identifying and focusing on how can they make it easy for consumers to complete home improvement projects? That's kind of where the emotion comes in. And then creating a new emotive campaign delivered a positive impact on brand KPIs, including emotional resonance and sales, tapping into that. But from your experience, Liz, what role do emotions play in advertising? And obviously the role of creativity must come into that.
I mean, the reason that advertising agencies earn a living is that they're full of people who are basically good at manipulating people's emotions. So we know how to, draw and paint and compose and film things which will just make you feel good. And if they feel good about the ad, you end up feeling good about the brand.